Tommy Salmons. This is year 0.
All right. I'm here with Donnie Gebert, the host of the Direct Republic podcast and the author of A Direct Republic, the Null Hypothesis of Politics. How are you doing, Donnie?
Mighty fine. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing well, man. I'm glad we actually got this rolling, man. I was really excited to talk to you. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of people that have been asking. I've been sharing your podcast around different groups that I'm involved in on the internet. People, other guests I've had on, people that listen to the show. So, and every one of them has come back on, who are these Direct Republic guys? So give me I don't want to take 2 episodes, but let's get a little bit of background about who you are.
My name's Donnie. I was in the military for, my name's Donnie. I was in the military for 19 years. I injured out. I did 4 different jobs, logistics, infantry. I was in the Navy as an electronics technician, and then I did military intelligence. I got exposed to, moderate amounts of getting shot at, but nothing really to write home about. It was more, I got exposed to the whole enterprise of the DoD. And I noticed that a lot of the stuff we're being told on TV versus what the military is, what the information we're getting on the inside versus the information we're getting on the outside, it's kind of different. So when I got out, I started looking really more into why does the system that's supposed to fix all these problems not fix them? And it just came from a lot of discrepancies, changes in language. A lot of lawyers speak, but all of the functional stuff gets messed around with. And I didn't understand how normal people would look at the continued political situation and just take it. And it's really more my own bias of I'm in an organization that's paid to not take it. And then I'm in an organization that's paying to cart my ass around the world and give me a perspective that other people don't have. Right. So when I got done with that, so all the discrepancies led me to this. There are 4 different ways to build a legislature: a direct democracy, a constitutional republic, a constitutional democracy, and a direct republic.
Okay.
And those are the ways you do it, because there's top down and there's bottom up. And basically I just had to go through all of the principles of what would it look like to do it from the bottom up. And, Walter Block and David Friedman have written books on the topic. And when you take some blockchain organization, a blockchain is an open public ledger. So everything that's supposed to belong to the public, there's no privacy issues there. So why wouldn't we have all of our documentation and transactions done in the public? And lo and behold, all the corruption comes from why we don't have that. So just how would we organize from the bottom up instead of centralized top down, and how would we do it in a digital age instead of like Flintstone?
Yeah, and I've gone back and I've listened to all of your episodes about 3 times on the Direct Republic podcast. And the one thing I find interesting is I just recently began to look into agorism and the way that would work. And your take is very agoristic in a way. Because you're looking at how can the everyday person make a difference in the political structure. And there are plenty of people out there that feel like we have no say, that the average people have no say. And so I found your take on how to actually combat the system, if you will, to be really interesting, because it really does allow for those of us who are a little more individualistic and looking at things from a perspective that we don't want to be involved in this. It kind of gives us an out. It gives us a way to say, okay, well, we can find a system that works for us, and this is how we get, you know, a system that works for each and every one of us.
Yeah, the what we got was an education in how this is done in a centralized way, and that's kind of explainable.
Yeah.
You could think about it. In the 50s, the government would, and I quote, they would release material to the public. They wouldn't necessarily tell anyone. They'd put it in one book. That one book would be in a public library in Fresno, California. So if anybody wanted to find this, and I quote, publicly available information, they had to know where the book was in the library in Fresno.
Right.
So a lot of people have been attacking this problem from the shittiest information holes I can imagine. I've been so long on an internet that I don't really remember. I was a child before the internet.
Yeah.
I didn't have to have a professional adult life trying to research things where the stuff that I can find is barely enough to cover the spread. So I guess the best way is, like, everybody has a legal supply chain, and we have an information supply chain, and we have a supply chain against strawberries. And the strawberries won't get here in the wintertime if they aren't paid for. And if those supply trains are weak to supply chain management problems, where some people steal the strawberries, or information chain management problems where the payments don't get made, or the payments get stolen en route, you will not have strawberries in the winter. That's just how that'll happen. Well, the legal supply chain works fundamentally the same way, except you're not allowed to not buy it. It's not strawberries. You will have this legal supply chain. It will work in this manner. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. And it was adopted, 100 years before anybody who was alive was born. But we really can't continue to go forward with information passing so fast, where the legal system is now just functionally holding everyone back. It's causing more problems than it's solving. And the whole purpose of it is to solve the problem it's designed to solve, and it doesn't solve those either. So at the end of the day, we're all into we got to rethink this anyway phase, because it doesn't work.
Yeah. And one of the most interesting comments in your book I found was when you were talking about the invention of the telegraph. I believe it was pretty much the end of the Constitution. That you were suggesting that your whole point was that the advancement of technology outdated the Constitution. It made it put us in a post-constitutional era, because the way that information was able to flow. And now with the internet, and it's flowing so quickly, you have obviously taken a like to blockchain. And I want to get into that a little bit more, because I'm not super familiar with it. It's one of those things that I really want to spend some time looking into, and I just haven't had the opportunity to look into it. That is one of my projects in the coming up weeks, is to really understand what blockchain technology is and the cryptocurrencies are and how we can use them. So how would blockchain, how does the technology of blockchain, not necessarily the cryptocurrencies, but the blockchain technology itself, how can we use that to further freedom for everyone?
Okay, one of the blockchain systems is called PROPY, P-R-O-P-Y.
Yes,
and
sir.
this is designed for deeding, land deeds. It's not a currency per se, but it's for land deeds. Okay. So the whole reason this blockchain exists is to do the deeding system. Well, the reason that your county has the ability to tax it all is because they hold that deeding system. They have the right to redeed if certain rules are broken. They have the right to tax, and if taxes aren't paid, they have the right to redeed and sell the land. So when you put these on an open ledger, what happens to the deed system is it becomes similar to cash, where it's peer to peer. I would buy your house from you. There is no one who can redeed it. There is no one who taxes land. So there's no need for a third party to hold the deed. So now the deeds are held by functionally anybody who wants to be a validator in the system. So you get involved in this. You can get a little bit of coin and then you can put it in a stake. It's called a staking wallet.
Okay.
The reason a cryptocurrency, let's stay away from currencies for now. So what this does is it basically takes all the property in whatever jurisdiction puts their deeds on this. It turns them into baseball cards. This works good with land. It doesn't work so well with real property, property that you can move around. You don't necessarily want to have I have a private key that allows me into a piece of property that could just be stolen and somebody takes it. But land isn't going anywhere. Right. So with GPS coordinates and the land taken care of, you can prevent the state from redeeding. Well, if they can't redeed, they can't tax. If they can't tax, how does the other stuff get paid for? Because really the pushback you get from a lot of people about government services is, well, okay, we get rid of the one part, but then the good part, the organization versus the fraud surface, the organization doesn't get done when they can't tax. Then you got to figure out the next problem of, okay, I just took away their funding source. Now how do I fund all the things that they were doing other than deeds? It just flows from there.
Okay. So basically, in layman's terms, like when you're entering into the blockchain and you're giving the individual the control over whatever particular resource that blockchain is developed to encompass, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so there's validators and there's users. So the validators are the ones who validate transactions, and these are done by a smart contract. It's functionally, you're running a node that everyone is running the same version, and because you're all running the same version, you will all keep an eye on each other's transactions. So everybody has a copy of the ledger instead of one person having a copy of the ledger. And any hidden ledger that you have to use FOIA request, that's the beauty of it. When everyone has a copy of the ledger, no one has that information stranglehold, and it's much easier to adjudicate when everyone is informed.
Right. So this is like true transparency, basically, is what we're really looking at in the blockchain.
Right.
Yes. Right. Okay. That helps me a little bit.
When you look at decentralization, when you're doing decentralization of a government, you could take one thing away from them, but you have to find a solution for that thing. If you're going to decentralize the whole thing, you have to figure out a solution for all of the things. So this is just the land solution, and you have tokens for your land instead of a deed register at the county court office.
Okay. Yeah, because that technology, man, really, I guess, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm 40 years old, and I'm like, the more shit pops up, the more I'm like, oh, just get away from me, So I just kind of, but I did find your take on it interesting. I was like, oh wow, like this could actually like really be something that we can use in the future.
Right. And the beauty of it is, like, a lot of people are fed up with politics, and that's the reason you do this, because you don't want to have these issues be political anymore, because they have solutions that don't involve that. They don't involve the argument. There's no reason to have one bucket of funding and vote over it. You put your money in your bucket and I put money in my bucket. And if your bucket doesn't get filled, maybe your idea is dumb. And if my bucket doesn't get filled, maybe my idea is dumb.
Right. And that's where I was going to go next. Yeah, that's definitely where I was going to go next, because you can, when you blockchain the political system, so to speak, you do, and when you wrote about it, you did allow for, hey, you know, some people may like the current system and they like being lazy and not being informed. They're not interested in all these things. But for those people that are interested and want to be informed and want to have a direct, you know, line to what is happening, where their money is going, where their support is going, they have the option to opt out of certain programs and opt into other programs through the blockchain system. And I found that really interesting, because that's always been something I've advocated for.
Well, the idea is that other people make laws that restrict your normal human liberty is kind of antithetical to the whole idea of getting along and civil society anyway.
Right.
Coordinating, you know, standards of behavior like not murdering and not raping is one thing. How we adjudicate if somebody breaks the rules is another. When somebody's breaking the rules, it really is more a matter of enterprise environment factors. You know, that person is on the run because they committed murder. It doesn't really matter if you have a state statute or a contract law society. Chasing a dude down is difficult. That's not really germane to how does the legal system function. And everybody seems to think that they need to understand the law the way they need to understand a police chase. And what they really need to understand is, no, you need to understand the law that applies to you, and you need to not let other people write it for you. Because otherwise, somebody else they will write you laws forever when you only have to pay for the laws you're involved with. It works better because the bullshit laws that nobody wants, they magically won't get paid for anymore.
Yeah.
Because nobody's paying for those ones.
Well, I mean, this would stretch well beyond that. It was 2 days ago I saw that the Taliban and the United States had come to an agreement, and we're signing a treaty, and that the United States was offering to pull out in 14 months. But you wouldn't have these perpetual wars, the ability to send people to war for an extended amount of time without the public support that was advocating and willing to pay for it up front. You wouldn't be able to fund programs by just printing money from the Federal Reserve. That would cut deeply into the debt. It would definitely curb quantitative easing in a significant way. So there's a lot of positives, not just for your personal liberty and the things that you can agree to on a personal level, but there's also the you know, kind of the echo effect, you know, that happens because of what you're choosing on your personal individual level. So I think a lot of people will be attracted to that, wanting, you know, you got these people that want Medicaid for all or Medicare for all. Okay, fine, pay for it. I don't mind if you have it. I just don't want you to force me into paying for it. And that's what you're offering.
Yeah, there's people who want Medicare for all, but they don't know what a risk pool is. So at a certain point, these people are so far out of their element because their politicians told them that because the politician has a printing press, many promises that you and I would recognize to be false have been fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the ability to do something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea, and it doesn't make it right. It just means that you have the ability to go harm a bunch of people because you have a printing press. Eventually, the illusion of the printing press goes away, and I will admit, the people who did this, man, they have been rolling the dollar hegemony really, really well. Like if I wasn't so, you know, sad about it, I'd be impressed. And they have really done a good job of keeping a dead currency alive since 1971. even past 2008 when the whole thing went asunder. So
Yeah.
now all I'm seeing is propaganda of everybody about everything. And, I'm apolitical, but Trump seems to be the guy who's going up in there trying to clean stuff up. Now, I understand he does, there's political stuff and not whatever's put on television. You just take most of that with a grain of salt.
Right.
But he's cleaned up, he's obviously cleaning up pedophiles and putting pedophiles in jail. Nobody can argue against, pedophile cleanup. So that seems to be attached to a lot of these other systems. Jeffrey Epstein was good at his job. Therefore, politicians have been doing a song and dance on printed money, and nobody really knows what's going on. And I just kind of see the game is coming to an end now. Well, when the game came to an end in the Soviet Union, when that wall came down, man, it was ugly behind there.
Right.
So rather than have a boogeyman behind the wall, when this illusion drops, it's better to have a plan. So I'm more the guy I'd rather sit around and figure out how does this go sideways? Because eventually it's like an unbalanced washing machine. So eventually this is going to go sideways. When it goes sideways, what does plan B look like?
Right.
And I think about as good as it gets is a decentralized legislature. And then never mind plan B. Sounds like a plan A to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really appreciate what you're doing. But you know what I hear, and I don't know if you've ever stopped and thought about this, and I'm sure you have. You're pretty introspective, it seems like. But what I hear is a man that spent 19 years in the military, jumping around from branch to branch, service to service, doing, having highly sensitive information trusted within him. And he looked back at the oath he took, and he looked at what he was doing, and he was like, you know what? Like, there's a better way to keep my oath than this. How much of that oath and what you promised to fulfill when you join the military has to do with the work that you're doing now?
I was always looking forward to my all enemies domestic tour. I was under the impression that my all enemies foreign tours were there because there were reasons. And prior to 2008, I don't think anybody knew any better. Right. No one on earth. We could have dialed back the government a bit, but just not all the way, because life on Earth had, there was no. 2008 was when high-speed internet came around, and that's when you could do a global blockchain system. So you could organize certain things in a different way. Beyond that, before that, I don't know how anybody would have had the ability to have a really, I don't want to say that there wasn't good information network. I'm just saying that those information networks were they could regional on the face of the planet, even if they knew, you might have a lot of information, but you didn't really have a way to coordinate across the entire planet in short order. And this became the way to really do that. And I never liked politicians. So I worry more about the all enemies domestic anyway. That's always where I was looking. I look outward, but inward is where I see like, let's just say you're looking both ways and you start seeing the problems inward more than outward.
Right.
And then you get sent to a war and you still see more problems at home. And then after a while, it's just like, I'm pretty sure the politicians are sending us out in the weeds because the real problems aren't here. That's where it is. You come home seeing the stuff overseas, you see a war over there, you come back and you're like, wait a minute, there's pieces of that here. How is it here? Because politics is war by other means.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of my favorite things, as you say, and that makes the way you describe that, looking domestically as opposed to looking at foreign enemies. It reminds me of Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy for America, when he wrote about the only way that America would come down is from within. That it's not going to be a foreign enemy. It's not going to be from without. It's going to be from within in the electing of these policies and things that take the country down. So that's really what I hear you talking about. But
Never mind, Hillary Clinton was a liar 30 years before she ran for president, and she still got all those votes.
right.
So you
Yes.
got to ask yourself, like, what are these people? What kind of decision making are these people making when they're looking at this person who's has a track record of you can't trust a word out of her mouth, and then she told you stuff, and now you believe her? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, and you also have to look at the Prussian system of public schooling that has been forced down our throats, for the last 100 years too, when it comes to the willingness and ability to swallow the propaganda that we're fed.
Yeah, I see the Prussian model is intentionally giving you not a lot of information in a long period of time.
Yeah, exactly. They're training you to be a factory worker. They want you to be part of the machine. That's it.
Worker class is what that machine is designed to crank out. And lo and behold, that's what it makes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And no one knows it better than me. I've been driving a truck for almost 20 years now. So I've been right in the middle of the machine, and I've defended that machine, and I've come to look out the other side and say, oh shit, I'm an anarchist. Fuck that machine. So
yeah. Well, I went to 7 different schools, and not all of them were public. So whatever message I was supposed to get as a kid, I didn't get it. whatever they were trying to make sure that I was absolutely certain of when I came out of school, I was absolutely not certain of any of it.
Well, you probably weren't.
Not what you're supposed to be when you come out of school.
Yeah, the last thing they want is somebody who asks questions. That's for sure. I could talk all day about that and the way I raise my kids and the things I tell my kids, and we could go off on a tangent on that, but I don't want to keep you too long because I've already made you wait too long to get on here. So let's move to money, because you broke it down perfectly on your podcast, on the Direct Republic podcast, and I'm going to keep plugging it. You guys need to go listen to all of the episodes. I know he's a humble guy, and he's like, I don't know why the hell you're listening to the first 2 episodes about who I am and what I did in the military, but sometimes people want to know that they are listening to somebody. As you said, when Bernays was asked what propaganda was, he said, well, the fact that all these people are going to believe me because you called me a doctor is propaganda. So they need to know who they're getting their information from. These people, like that, people need to know who they're getting their information from. So I think you did a great service by recording those first 2 podcasts, and I enjoyed it. I enjoy your sardonic humor. You have and I'm sure that's part of being in the service, is having that dark sense of humor. So I really enjoyed that. But I want to move to money, and you made a point that not a lot of people get, that the dollar and a Federal Reserve note, not the exact same thing. Can you break that down, man? Layman's terms, easy as you can. Break that down for people.
Well, the U.S. dollar is set to a 1/20th of an ounce of gold by statute. The Federal Reserve note, brand named the dollar, TM, trademarked by the Federal Reserve, is what everybody uses. So this bait and switch went on a long, long time ago. This was when there were the Civil War and the Revolutionary War had gone through basically war bonds that had blown up, and soldiers who didn't get paid for their service, and if they didn't get paid, if they did get paid, at a certain point you're a mercenary, but at a certain point you got to reimburse a soldier for their expenses, otherwise they can't afford to go. So that had blown up a couple of times. So when the dollar came back, the U.S. dollar by the Federal Reserve standards was redeemable for 1/20th an ounce of gold from 1913 until I want to say it was almost until FDR was confiscating gold. So there was almost 20 years there. That's a long time to dull somebody. as to what a dollar is versus a Federal Reserve note. Then the Bretton Woods system came out, and overnight it went from $20 an ounce to, I think it was 40. It was 40% backing. So whatever the bank had, they used to have a 1-to-1 reserve so that people could go and turn in their dollars and they'd be able to get gold. Well, now the banks only had to have a 40% backing. And then when Nixon took them off the gold standard, they didn't have any backing. So ever since then, it's just been a floating standard of Federal Reserve notes that get printed ad nauseum versus some kind of mathematical standard that's tethered to a reality that you and I share. Otherwise, the dollar is just propaganda and a printing press, and it's not a unit of measurement that anyone can trust.
Absolutely. And I like the way you break it down. You know, I've seen a meme going around that shows a dollar prior 1971, and it said $1 on it, and then the next picture is a dollar today, and it says Federal Reserve note on it. And I think the meme is trying, you know, it's trying to make the same point that you're making, but I think the way that you explain it is really easy for people to understand. You do a really good job with that. And I think that's really one of the more important points that people need to understand is that what they're spending is not a dollar. You can call it a dollar, and that's what we call it. We call it a dollar, but it's not a dollar. And when you look back since the beginning of the Federal Reserve, you know, the currency, the paper currency that we carry around in our pocket, the fiat, whatever you want to call it, has lost 96% of its spending value and its spending power. And I know you don't like the word value, so I'm gonna back off of that word for a second, but it's spending power.
Yeah, well, the way they abuse the system is they change the unit of measure. If I come over to your house and I ask for a cup of sugar and I hand you a measuring cup and you hand me back a thimble filled with sugar, you have changed the unit of increment. You have now said that the thimble is full of sugar is a cup. Well,
Right.
If you hand me back a 5-gallon bucket of sugar, I win. If you hand me back a thimble full of sugar, I lose.
Right.
The problem here isn't I'm not borrowing a cup. I've saved all those cups in my bank account, and they were 5-gallon buckets when I put them in there, but they're going to be thimbles by the time you take them out because the Federal Reserve is just going to keep printing until all of your sugar is gone. But don't worry, you'll still have as many cups as you had before. You'll just have a lot less sugar. And
Right.
That's where the purchasing power just evaporates. So it's as long as we keep doing it, it will continue because that's how it works.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right about that. And sometimes it's hard to show people that. I remember having a conversation with my dad a while back about the purchasing power of the dollar. And he was like, no, but you're underestimating the power of quantitative easing. And I was like, okay. I was like, all right. I was like, do you understand that in 1920, 1 ounce of gold would buy you a nice custom-made suit and a nice pair of shoes? And today, 1 ounce of gold will buy you a nice custom-made suit and a nice pair of shoes. Now look at the price of gold in 1920 versus the price of gold today. Now, what has changed? The custom-made suit and the shoes? Yeah, a little bit with style, but the dollar is losing value, not the gold and not the suit and shoes. You know, and he was like, really? Is that true? And I was like, yeah, that's true. You know, so when you can point to something solid like that people can look at and say, oh, shit, you're right. You know, $20 in 1920 buys me the exact same thing that $1,300 in 2020 buys me, you know, so maybe there's an issue going on. Maybe there's something been happening. So
your dad's reply there has some information in it. He says, you don't understand the power of quantitative easing. It sounds like he's preaching to you. You don't understand the power of the Federal Reserve. But if you just believe that they could do it, then it'll all be okay because the power of quantitative easing. Does anybody know what that means? All it means is you're going to debase the unit of measure. I don't think your dad wanted to debase the unit of measure, but when he's engaged in the topic, it sounds like the power of the Federal Reserve.
Right. And just to defend my dad for a minute, he has come around in the last 6 months on quantitative easing. Just to let you know.
Oh. Yeah. Oh no! I'm just saying that crazy out. Like I wasn't there for the conversation, but
no, I know.
What he said.
I'm just
evangelical.
My mom listens, and she might be like, "Hey, he's talking shit about you." No, we're not talking shit about you.
No,
love you, Dad.
Listen, I'm noticing a lot of stuff. Yeah, I love you, Dad. I noticed there's a lot of evangelism in government propaganda. You have to believe in the power of how it works.
Absolutely.
If you don't, then you'll just stop because it's dumb.
Well, did you watch that? And this is kind of totally off subject, and people are going to think I'm fucking insane. Did you watch the series on Netflix, Trotsky?
I did not.
Oh man, I would really suggest that you watch it. I think you'll enjoy it. They did a really good job of humanizing a person that people paint as evil and showing it as this dynamic of humanity that he has both good and evil, which I think is important. You know what I'm saying? Like whether I agree with his political ideology or not, I think it's very important to paint people of history as human beings that are both capable of good and evil. But he did make a comment and at one point in the series where he was, I don't even think it was him, I think it was somebody talking to him, and that gave him advice. And he was talking revolution, and the guy made a comment that, hey, you have to quit looking at this as anything other than religion or something of that nature. And he's like, religion requires belief. Religion requires faith. And so he's in that show, they're openly, revealing the fact that political ideology is sold as religion. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that started with me several years ago. I'd say it was Larkin Rose who just started calling the government like straight up as a religion, and he was pretty good at it. And I started breaking it down, and the organizational matrix is very telling. There's a deity at the top, and you can't go to get Jesus. There is no Jesus. The reason the priests are raping the children has nothing to do with Jesus. But if we want to go and get the Vatican, there is no Vatican. It's a group of people. It's a location and it's a group of people. The organization is called the Vatican. Then there's a location called the Vatican. But you're talking, when you want to go get someone, you're not trying to get the Vatican. You're trying to get a bunch of raping priests. And that's kind of how the government functions, except you're looking for raping congressmen. That's about it. And they've been hiding behind the paywall for a long time.
Yeah.
You were talking about Trotsky. You're saying they were just trying to humanize him in the whole thing and make it look like, he was basically clear that you were preaching a religion about it.
All right. So in the first 5 minutes of the season, with the first 5 minutes of the first episode, I thought it was just going to be straight propaganda. I honestly did. Now this is a series about Trotsky, and it's made in Russia. This is a Russian producer. It's all subtitled. You have to read your way through it. Okay. But as I got into the series and I watched it because I wanted to see where they were going with it. as I got into it, you began to see like the nuance of humanity, the struggle within, the ability for him to completely dismiss or excuse the murder of innocent people and things like that. And you were able to see that, okay, what they're trying to do is they're trying to show that Trotsky was a man. Now, he wasn't like some immortal beast, and he wasn't a devil, and he wasn't a demon. That he was flawed as a man, and the way that he excused killing these people while demonizing Stalin for doing the exact same thing. You know what I'm saying? So it was a really interesting conflict. Yeah.
I find that as soon as you find out how all this stuff, when you find out how politics really works behind the veil, it's never anything in the 8th grade civics book. And then it looks somewhere between Jeffrey Epstein, Trotsky, and an election. And the election being the better of the three.
Right.
That's gross.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah.
I've been finding a lot of this is neurolinguistics. Straight up neurolinguistic nonsense. Like 1,000 years ago, the science of neurolinguistics 1,000 years ago was called white magic.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know, but someone would come along and they'd speak a bunch of words to you, and then you would be enchanted, and you'd wander off into the hills and not know what you were doing because someone told you how it worked, and then you thought you knew.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Right. I don't want to cover all your subjects because I really want everybody listening to this podcast to go check out your podcast, because you get really in depth and you cover things in a very you cover things in a very unique way, and I find it very entertaining as well as informative. Like I do. I enjoy listening to you because you have this kind of like I said, you have this kind of like sardonic kind of sense of humor that's kind of like this undertone when you say certain things. I don't know, I guess unless you're as cynical and sick as I am, you won't get it. But
right.
But there's a lot of comedy in there.
You describe it on its rudimentary terms, and then you turn it all the way up to volume 11 in the worst case scenario, all at the same time, and you get the whole scope of the enterprise, right from where you're going to touch it to all the way to the dumbest end, and that's the whole thing. So once you understand the scope of the enterprise and you realize, okay, this is just mostly dumb. Everything in three-dimensional space is dumb. As soon as everybody realizes that, a lot of these, it gets harder to lie to people in politics, because as soon as the politician says it, the people go, there's no way that happens in space. That does not happen in three-dimensional space.
Right.
The laws of friction would not allow what you just promised us. Period. And then I hear some general get on a show and says Elon Musk is whatever patents he just released, and his stock went through the roof in Brownsville, Texas. If anybody wants to reference this, the guy's name is General Steve Quast. He was an Air Force general, and he says Elon Musk has technology that'll get you from here to Singapore in 40 minutes. That's interesting. That all of a sudden we've got that kind of technology coming out of a civilian. and that came out of an Air Force general's mouth. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. It's hard to lie to an Air Force general about aircraft going from the United States, because he's read on about everything going on here.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
We're all in for some very interesting information here in the next several months.
Well, and if you would have told me when I was, 5 years old, right? That would have been 1984. I turned 5. If you would have told me in 1984, the technology, the advancements I would have seen in my lifetime, I know I would have thought you were absolutely trying to write tell me a bedtime story. Like it would have blown my mind. So I'm absolutely not
saw
surprised.
Return of the Jedi in 1983. I might have bought it. I might have bought the story because of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if I'd seen that by the time I was 5. I don't know. You'd have to ask somebody who was paying more attention to me than I was. But hey, man, we're running up on some time. I don't want to keep you too long, and I want to make sure that we get all this recorded in a good format. So what I wanted to ask you, and this was something I was thinking about today. This was the one question that was nagging me all day long. Is what is it that today people can do to move towards a direct republic, towards that life of more liberty that you see as a feasible option for every individual today?
That you have to understand that what you're being sold in politics is functionally a lie. It's either a dialectic lie or it's a mechanical lie, because most of what you're seeing in the political realm is being supported by the printing press. You can talk about taxes, you could talk about fees. Most of what's going on in the government at this point is multi-trillion-dollar deficits where the dollars get pushed into they just get pushed into accountability. So the thing you need to do is, I would say either start learning your monetary system or start learning your political system, looking at them for the lies. And if you don't know what a lie looks like in your political or monetary system, then you're just a human victim waiting to happen, because nobody can really help. Like, there's a little bit of self-help where your 8th grade civics class was only half right. It was half right and it was half complete, which means it was wrong and halfway there. So you go find the other half, and then you'll have some kind of better idea of how it works where you don't get stolen from. That's what they could do for themselves. It's finding out what third-party fraud looks like in your life and clean it up. And it's really a lot of education. The enemy is in the mirror most of the time.
Interesting. Okay. I like that. The enemy is in the mirror most of the time. And
if you don't know how to do it yourself, you're not helping.
That's going to go up there, though, with one of my favorites, the favorite of your quotes. Politics is war by any other means, and the enemy is in the mirror most of the time. So if you're not getting anything out of that, you're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. Yeah, where can we find you? Where can they come get you at, man? What's your website, and give all the books and everything.
The Null Hypothesis of Politics.com is a free book, and all the podcasts you can get your hands on. I'm looking for anybody who knows anybody in Bermuda that's connected in Bermuda, because they just lost their US dollar ties, like some of their banking functions, the whole island lost. So there's a distressed government is a great place to set up an economic freedom zone. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking for those, but also anybody in the software world, VC money world, philanthropy world who wants to learn how to create software to, like, instead of invading with the Second Amendment and making infantrymen that will fight against their government, you go in and you pass out software and you teach everybody how to create a peaceful revolt on their own.
Right.
So this is the peaceful revolt model, and anybody who wants a peaceful revolt, I'm right here.
Okay, and repeat that website again, because you broke up just a little bit.
The Null Hypothesis of Politics.com.
Thank you. Okay. And then you, the Direct Republic podcast, it's on Spotify. Is it on any other platforms? Do you have it on Google Play or iTunes, Apple, anything like that?
I have it on Anchor. Anchor has it on 6 or 7. If you go to my website, the button there will take you to Anchor, and then there are options. Spotify is the easiest one, but well, it's the easiest one for me. But there's 5 or 6 other ones there that it's already up on.
All right, fair enough. And if y'all need to go read the Null Hypothesis and listen to the Direct Republic podcast. He gets a lot more in detail in the podcast. And you're what, 5 episodes in, 6 episodes in?
11, but some of them are short. I just put a couple ones up the other day, but they're short.
I might have missed them, man. I think the last one I listened to, like I said, I've listened to the ones I've listened to like 3 times, and it was the last one I listened to was Total War. So
yeah.
So I might be behind.
Into the manipulate. Yeah.
That one was really good, though. I do plan on going to the website and downloading that document and reading through it to see everything you got going on in red there, because I was like, what? Wait, what?
Hey, a copy of that document in The Art of War is a very good von Clausewitz tutorial. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
I don't believe in nonsense. So I'm looking at that document, I'm like, wow, this is a really good rundown.
Right. Yeah. No, it was really interesting the way you broke it down, the way you broke down the bullet points, and I was like, oh shit. It's like, okay, I see where this is going. So
yeah, some of that stuff is like an instruction manual on how to hurt a primate.
Right.
So
really interesting stuff, man.
That's not an opinion.
All right. Well, look, I'm going to sign out of the podcast. I want to chat with you just for 1 second as soon as we get off here. So, to everybody listening, I'm Tommy Salmons. Late. All right, man.